friend, I got to really know John through Rotary. But the last, I don't know, it's been a year or 2 years that I became John's chauffeur. Picked him up every Thursday to take him to Rotary. Picked him up once a month to go play poker. And whether we were going to Rotary or coming home or going to poker, John just regaled me with his stories, particularly about his time in the military. But I got to hear a lot about Roseville High School. I got to hear a lot about and learn a lot about the Roseville community as it grew up. And I got to hear a lot about Rotary from John. It was so much fun. The last day that we rode to Rotary together, right before he fell ill, we got to swapping stories about the military, about the time I spent, significantly years later than he spent. But swapping stories, and he was laughing so hard. My telling him about my experiences when I got out and I was in the reserve and how messed up that was. He just got such a big kick out of that. And then, of course, I think he laughed all the way home, too. It's just that John was funny. You didn't know that. John is a Rotarian. I think you're going to hear more about that. 65 years of perfect attendance and involved in a lot of things. He was a great Rotarian. As a veteran, John was a dedicated veteran, helping to put on events every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Pearl Harbor, Korean Day. John was always there, and he was a great leader in putting on those events, and a lot of fun to be with at those events. You heard a little bit about his athletic accomplishments. He was a great athlete in high school, but most of you probably don't know a lot about him later on in years, where it's the old Placer, Nevada baseball league. And I see a lot of the old P&L players here today. John was an umpire in that league. And I was fortunate enough when I was in my early 20s to get to play in that league. And I don't know if I ever crossed paths with John, but I know my father-in-law did. My father-in-law was Dave Roderick, and he was a very well-known left-handed pitcher. And I don't think he and John got along well. Dave would never say anything, but I guess he had this famous stare that he would give John if John wasn't calling the balls and strikes really the way he wanted him to. And lastly, I'll close with, most of you probably don't know, John was a poet. He loved poetry. When we would do these veterans events, he'd always have me do a poem about veterans. Well, John wrote a poem that he gave to my wife and I. And it was about Rotary, but it was about my father-in-law, Dave Roderick. And it's titled Roderick at Bat. It looked mighty rugged for the Rotarian Club that day. The score stood 6-5 with an inning left to play. Then things began to sprout with Goodlow at second and Hexham at first. If you're old Roseville, you know those names. And stepping up to the plate and aiming for the creek was none other but Rotary's Dave Roderick. Now somewhere in our famous land the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are bright. Somewhere men are laughing. Somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Rotary. The mighty Roderick rounded out. My father-in-law passed away years ago. My wife, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, asked me to tell John up there, you better be calling strikes.